Welcome to Swatches Livestream number 44. I am illustrator and art educator Clint Cearley. Welcome for joining in the stream, especially if you're joining in live. If you're watching this in recording and you want to just get straight to the content, you might want to scrub forwards a little bit because we're going to be having a couple of chill minutes here just for people to join in during the live stream. And of course, I will be taking your questions during the live stream. Make sure that you're putting @swatches in your comments so that it will be flagged for me to notice them, and we will try to answer those during the course of this program. I'm going to just look over here and double check that all of my settings look green. OBS says everything is good. As you can see, I'm in a different location. The internet here is far better. If you've been watching the live streams for the last year or so, you will probably recognize this background. It's definitely the best speed that I have available in this area. So I'm just leaving my second computer up here so I don't have to haul my main one back and forth. But everything looks green on this side, and I assume people will be joining in pretty soon. Mateus, welcome. How's it going? We've got one person in here. Okay, now it's starting to give me some information. I forgot I need to adjust this so I don't cramp down on my speed. There. Trying to upload in high def and stream back to yourself the same channel in high def a little bit more than what the system wants to handle. George, man, thanks for joining. And good piece that you sent in on the Patreon. George is a patron of mine over on Patreon at the $40 level, so he gets to send in an image every cycle over there on Patreon, and we just recorded a feedback video for him on one of his pieces. Nice piece that he has coming along of a vampire lady using a bit of magic, so enjoyed going over that one. Thanks for joining me out there. All right, so let's go ahead and just do a little recap. If you're just joining the channel or don't know what we're doing right now, then this live stream is mainly about going over the art challenge. This is a challenge that I make up for you guys, and everyone is welcome to participate and post their stuff on the Swatches Facebook group at swatches.group. It will link you right over to the right group. But only the patrons at the $10 level or above from Patreon will get to actually have their images reviewed. So that's what we're going to be doing here in just a minute. We'll be going through every image that was submitted for this particular challenge and kind of breaking it down and saying what's working, what isn't, and if they want to do some more work on it, what are some ways that they can improve their pieces and just improve their critical eye going forwards. So the particular challenge that they're trying to deal with right now is for the Wagon. It was inspired by this piece by fellow Magic the Gathering artist Steve Prescott. This piece is called Goblin Contraption, if you want to go look it up yourself. I thought it was just so much fun, great colors, great action. It's just a very amusing scene. And so I had challenged you guys to create a sort of medieval armored wagon of a goblin contraption that is self-driving. It is mechanical or a little steampunky, and it is just kind of filled to the gills with weaponry and destruction. It shouldn't be highly realistic. This isn't a gritty sort of war image. This is like this particular image. It should be kind of lighthearted and fun with good colors and lots of energy. That is what everyone was going for. We've already had the previous live stream on the sketch phase, so there's 2 weeks to do these challenges, and now they have sent in the finals, and we're going to be taking a look at those. Of course, we did take a 2-week break with the Christmas and New Year's holidays. I had a wonderful time with some friends and family myself. Hopefully everybody out there did as well. I got some more people joining in the chat. Jer, good to see you. Solardi, Lisa, good evening from the Netherlands. Well, good evening from Tennessee. Thanks for joining in. Ricardo, man, good to have you join. All right, so let's go ahead and kick it off with the new challenge. I know a lot of people say they like it when I go ahead and give you guys a heads up. We will also cover what the new challenge will be as a cap at the end of the episode as well. So the new challenge, if you dare accept it, is based on Red Riding Hood. Now this one's a little different than what we've done before, so let's open the brief. All right, this is the outline of what you would be doing. I made this up kind of what would be a fictional brief, and it is to give everybody an idea of what it's like to work in the industry, to follow an art direction, work on a schedule, and the sort of information that you might be provided if you were working on a real project. So this one is just for the channel, of course. You have a week to submit in the sketch, another week to do the final, and it will be 3,000 pixels high, 2 wide, and it is based on, of course, the classic tale of Red Riding Hood. Create an illustration cover art for the Red Riding Hood. It should have a fairy tale feeling and not be a completely realistic single scene. I'll come back to explain that in just a moment. Try to convey the haunting aspect of the story in the image and depict Red Riding Hood, the wolf, the cabin, and the woods. A collage or movie poster style or other graphical approach would be appropriate. Aim for timeless quality over visual punch. Traditional media such as graphite and watercolor would be appropriate. So if you are looking for a challenge to do a traditional illustration for, this could be it. If you want to just do a completely done, just pencil drawing, black and white, if you did it, with a little skill and did it with, a good style to it, that would fit, right? If you can get kind of a timeless quality, fairy tale, children's book feeling. Create the image to fit the provided PSD template of the cover with text. Don't put anything crucial behind the title text. Okay, dismiss this note. Just dismiss that because that doesn't apply. We had to push the live stream. So let's open the file. I will take a look and show you. Adobe Photoshop. Okay, so this is what we have. Let me move my layers palette over here. We just have a background layer. I just had some color on there so you can see the text show up. Obviously, you will put your image in between the text, underneath the text, and above this background layer. Here is the text for the gold text, and this is the text for the white text. Leave the white text white, but if you want to change the color of the gold text, you can do that. You can just do whatever color fits your design, but don't change the text, don't move the text. You can just change the color of that particular text, and that's as much allowance as I'll leave for this one. This is also the exact size that I want you to do the image. So, just make a copy of this or turn that layer off and start painting on this scene. As I mentioned, don't put anything crucial behind this, right? Okay, now let's talk about style a little bit. We're not going for Magic the Gathering. We're not going for Hearthstone. Those aren't the kind of images we're looking for. We're looking for something more illustrative or storybook, and here is some guidelines. James Jean, who did a fantastic run of covers for the comic Fables. You can look up his work, lots of inspiration there. I also picked up a book of his, I think it's called The Art of James Jean, and that was well worth their money. I certainly enjoyed that book, got a lot of inspiration and enjoyment out of that one. So as in this case, you could have something like Red Riding Hood. She's up there and she's, dominant in the scene, and, you have the cloak going off, and maybe you see the woods down here. Maybe you see the glowing eyes back in the woods somewhere. So it's more collage style, less literal as a single scene. This is a classic one of Arthur Rackham, who did the original illustrations for Alice in Wonderland. Well, I guess the first really published one. I believe the author did some sketches early, but then Arthur Rackham was really popularized it. So if you want to do like a traditional scene, media, like you see on this one, then that would also be appropriate. This was just pen and ink with some sort of watercolor or tinted ink. And that would work as well if you could come up with a good design to it. Remember, if you're going to be more limited in your colors and overall pop of the scene, then make sure that you have good flow in energy and composition. Next up, let's take a look at this one. I want to think this is also another one of James Jean. Something like this could also work where you have just a very straightforward view of Red Riding Hood, you know, put the hood around her. And then various symbology of the story, maybe trees going different directions, maybe wolves, you know, silhouettes hidden in the tree leaves and limbs. I want to think they're pine trees, but limbs then, not leaves. Maybe you see maybe she's standing there and then her shadow cast and it looks like a wolf or it looks like a tree or the cabin. You know, feel free. This is something you can be a little more expressive about. If you want to change up the style, hey, if you got a completely different style, something like this one, I'm not sure how you say that name, Tzvazva. It's very engaging. It could be just what you need on the right kind of book. So if you want to bust out, try some new styles, or your normal style is a little different than what we do, this is a place to use it. Good option on this one. This is also a really cool piece. This one stuck with me. I came across this one years ago, and it has just really stuck in there. It hit me, and there's so many great things that I love about this particular image. Another situation where you could have Red Riding Hood, basically a silhouette, right? And then you have the whole scene kind of going up around her like this. Obviously not highly realistic, like painting-wise. It's more line-based, like a comic, which I believe is what it was for. I think it was a comic cover. But there we go. There are some ideas, and these images will all be available to all of the viewers of the channel out on the Facebook group, and the patrons will be able to join in and get their stuff reviewed next week with the finals the week following. All right, let me see if I'm missing anything in the chat. Loving this challenge. Awesome. Glad you like the idea, Lisa. Michael says, hey, Clint, I just voted on your playmat illustration on the Facebook. Awesome illustrations. Oh, thank you, Michael. Yes, what he's talking about is I will be getting several of my Magic the Gathering images that I illustrated printed through Ultra Pro. Us artists don't have the right to print playmat images of our art. We only have the right to print it on like prints, paper prints. And so we can do it through Ultra Pro, who owns that right, has licensed that right. But we have to do them in bulk. All right, we've got to order like 50 at a time. So I want to make sure whatever I do order, which is of course going to be for resale, that I pick popular ones that are going to resell. So if you do want to vote, just go over to my art Facebook page. It's like facebook.com/Cearley Clint, I think is what it is. I have too many web pages, I forget. There you go. Jonathan says, sounds awesome, but I have to skip this one. I'm taking part in Art War 3 till the end of next week. Oh, Jonathan, yeah, absolutely. Do the Art War thing. I kind of forgot that was going on. In fact, let me just give a shout out to everyone else. Other people might be interested in that. I don't know why all of a sudden my OBS is giving me, well, that's weird. YouTube is saying that I've got bad settings, but I don't know why. Okay, well, OBS is telling me, my streaming software OBS is telling me that everything is good, but YouTube's giving me some conflicting information. So if you would, go ahead and just put in the chat if it's coming through okay to you. If it's not, then I can pause and look at the the settings and see if there's something I missed, but I think everything should be good. Okay, yeah, so Art War 3, huge online art competition. And if you want to join in a major competition with serious rewards and recognition, go check it out. I will not be 1 ounce offended if you want to take a break from my stuff and go do Art War. All right, that's the real deal out there. So, put everything that you've learned from this channel into practice and go do Art War if you're so inclined. I was trying to think man, I would even consider, now I don't want to give you guys feedback on your Art War stuff. That wouldn't be fair, really. So no, I'm not going to do that. Just made me think about it. But as a quick reminder to myself, I'm using Aurelie's image. I think I mentioned that last time, but I'll be using that in the cover thumbnail to this video. If that's not acceptable, I'll find something else. But as of the moment, that's what I'm using. All right, so let's jump over to this. We'll be looking at these, and we will also be answering. We've got 4 different questions that were submitted yesterday on the Facebook group as to questions you just want answered during the stream. So we'll pause occasionally and get those answered. The stream is fine. Okay, thank you. I'm not sure why YouTube was giving me a caution on that, but I'm glad it looks good. Everything fine. Yeah, I did push the resolution up this time. It should be 1920 by 1080 instead of 1280 by 720. So full HD. Jonathan says, so you don't hate me? Not at all, Jonathan. Do that, man. Go for it. And make sure you just post it, when you finish your image, put it out on the Swatches page so that I can take a look at it later. That'd be great. Okay, Arley, starting with you, per usual, as we're going alphabetically. I can go ahead and close this. Oh, cancel. Oh, yeah, I can close that one. That's the right one. Don't save. And I'm going to bring that up a little bit. Okay, so this is what Arley has, and I'm going to move that up a little. Okay. Seems like I've talked about this before. It was on the other stream that we didn't have a good enough connection, but I'd started. All right. Overall feeling is excellent. I remember some of the things that we talked about on the sketch. I think you had another figure back here, but we ended up taking him out because these guys were sufficient to carry the scene and the mood of what was going on. And it has the overall action and emotion and gist that the brief was asking for. So Arley, I commend you on really understanding what the challenge was about and nailing that, because you did. And I think just about every art director who asked for what I asked for and received this as a concept would be like, yeah, you got it. That's right along the right line. So as far as execution, what can we do to move this, forwards, or what's some of the problem areas? The biggest thing to me is the lack of value and color punch, because it has good shapes, it has good emotion, expression, poses, all of that stuff is very solid. So let's talk about colors and values. As a reminder, here is our sort of inspiration image. And as you can see, lots of color, good punch. Everything is very crisp, very clean. That's very Trump. Now that I do that, I feel like that. Okay, so how can we learn from those a little bit and apply them to your piece? Well, a minute ago, I just had 5 or 10 minutes extra, and I made this adjustment. It was just playing with the levels palette and move the saturation up a little bit. So that right there, you can see a distinct improvement in the overall clarity of the image, because right now it's very grayed out. I'm curious if I make a new layer and we test that, and I'm going to set it to color. We don't need character. Here we go. You can see if you switch it over to color that it doesn't hold up very well because it's so much of the same gray all over this. Even on this one, if you actually switch it to color, it still works really well. If it'll let me make a new layer there. So here it's still very clean, right? All the edges. And you can pay attention to see why that works. So this guy is distinctly lighter than the background behind him, so he stands out well. This guy is distinctly darker than the background, and he has a little edge light that helps make him pop out as well. So you see that if there's a light background, he makes it shadowed. If there's a shadowed background, he makes it light. And this back and forth keeps things a lot cleaner. Another thing to pay attention to is the value range of each of the materials. So this dark iron, right, that he has on a lot of these different, cannonballs and stuff, is a black to a medium dark value range with just a medium light highlight on it. But it doesn't get beyond that, right? It doesn't get into mediums and medium lights as an overall. It doesn't get into white. So that also helps keep things clean. Another thing that helps keep things clean is the color range. We mentioned this in the other episode, but let's go over here. And that is every part of this image has a distinct color, dominant color. Let me say it that way, yeah. Has a distinct dominant color. So green here, bluish green here, orange, yellow, red, dull violet, blue violet. You can see these overall areas. And then the goblins stay about the same kind of green all over the place, which helps them stand out. Another thing to pick up from this is the value control. Steve killed it on the value control and the color control with this. Watch how the background and all of this area is way, way less contrasty. See, we got whites and blacks on all these more foreground elements, but then we have very limited values between all this stuff in the back. It's just within 2, maybe 3 values of each other. Everything else has like 8, 9, 10 values. So that's another thing to pay attention to. So distinct color ranges and distinct value ranges is what's going to really help sell what you're looking for in your image. And we'll see about doing that. Let's turn that back off. And I need a new layer at the top that I can actually draw on. Oh, yes, I was expecting the brushes from my other computer. It's like, what is going on? Okay. Ricardo asked, have you ever turned down a commission halfway because the client wasn't able to communicate what they wanted with clarity? It happened to me a while ago. It has been awful. Have I ever had to turn down a commission because they weren't able to communicate what they wanted? I think I did it with graphic design years ago. As far as artwork, no, I don't recall having to turn it down because of that. I've had to decline doing. I had a client that wanted a revision, so I did the revision, one another revision, and then they kept asking for more and more revisions. And I had to, at the second revision or third, something like that, I told them, okay, this next thing that you asked for has to be the last thing because I've got other projects I have to work on. And yeah, it is a pain. It is definitely a pain. And most good contracts are going to have a clause that kind of covers that. So sorry I went through that, but I've never come across that especially with a good client or a bigger client, because generally those art directors know their stuff and they know how to explain things well and they know how to work with artists well, and that just doesn't tend to happen very much. Okay, so on here, I also pulled these over so you can kind of see that. You can see the difference there. And here too. So where would I start and how would I kind of address doing this? The first thing would be getting each area to have its own value in colors. Let's move this. I'm not going to do a full paint over. I don't have time for that. But I will try to just drop in a couple of things in a couple of places that will hopefully get you the idea of what we're talking about here. So for this big metal guy back here, I'm looking at this hammer and I'm thinking that's pretty close to what we're going for. So it could have, that is at 40%. I also don't need that at 10. There we go. And, and back here, just letting it actually go to black. That way he stands out. And the other thing is, there isn't any light on these guys. Like, evidently, it's not that dark of a scene, but these guys don't have any light on them. And you can tell that there's a great volume from these guys from the light. So if we were to pick up, something like this and start going over these guys, we could get them to stand out more from this dark metal. And I think that would be helpful. If you raise their entire value a bit and also brought in some other skin tones, like the inside of these ears, right, have this pinkish color. So if we came in here and added a bit more pink, to the ears, that helps a little bit. Maybe their noses, they get, a different color or something towards the end. Or maybe they get more like kind of blue-greenish. See, some of this gets really light. And you can have some of these lighter tones kind of hitting through there. A little blue tone maybe for that iron, right? And we're not trying to get a lot of the other colors on there. And this sort of thing, you're not being completely realistic. You want each area to have a distinct kind of color and feel. So like the tops of these, these can be a bit brighter. That way the shapes are very clean, right? And then if you're going to have a candle like that, or you want to have more of a light source, then you can do it like this, where it's even more, right? You can have nice big glow on that if you're trying to play that up, and I have a feeling that's what you were trying to do. I'm grabbing some of those colors. So all this is muddy down here, and we need to pull out more from that. Let's see. Yeah, you see like these colors here? That would be something good to get into the cannon, right? Like this could have some color to it. We can have all this wonderful tone. I mean, it's lit on the inside, right? Fire. You could even have some fire still coming out of it. And instead of just having a white streak, you know, that's somewhere where you would also want to put some color. Let it pop a little bit. So let's turn these off. And maybe, where's my big soft one? Yeah. We can turn on like an overlay layer. Like maybe this whole area is warm, right? From that cannon. And maybe this lantern, it makes this part a bit more yellow. Maybe that's a bit more orange. And then the background, if you wanted to contrast some of the, you know, there's a lot more warm tones on them, that you could use a bit more of maybe a blue back here. Sort of stand out from that. So, you know, that's the sort of direction I would go with it. Just start going in there and really separating out those values. Put light against dark, put warms against cools. Put some more lighting on these guys. All the detailing is good. The concepting is good. Punch up the colors. Try to avoid just whites and blacks. Whites for like clouds and stuff. See if you can get some more color into it. You can do like three-dimensionality stuff to it where, you know, the top of it maybe is catching, I need a normal layer. It's catching kind of the blue light from the sky, but the inside is catching the, you know, the yellow, so you have a more of a 3D feel to the shape. Yep, along that line. Okay, well, hopefully that helps here. Arley, thanks for joining the challenge, and look forward to see what you do with Red Riding Hood. Next up, Clint Lockwood. Similar thing here. I had a couple of minutes just to pull together some stuff to save me time during the stream. With this one, he does say that he's wanting to go with a bit more of a realistic style because he wants to put it in his portfolio, and that's sort of the direction that he wants to go with his portfolio. And as soon as I saw this, I thought, I know the exact reference. Another piece of art immediately reminded me of this other piece of art, and could not find it. It would have been just the best reference for this image as far as how to handle some of the things. Cannot figure out where I put that thing. So that's out the window. But I found a couple of other ones that may be good. Still going with like the War Wagon feeling. Not so zany. And that's okay. I always tell you guys, no, your priority is your art and your gallery. These challenges are about just inspiring you and pushing you, and it gets you an idea that you want to run with a different direction. You go do that. All right. You don't owe me anything. But let me know if you're trying to deviate. Otherwise, I'm going to assume that you're trying to do the challenge. You know, try to accomplish what the challenge is saying. So, very clean rendering on this. Very good rendering as far as the forms, and taking into account a lot of the lighting going on and the bounce lighting going on. So a lot of thought has been going into how to render this scene realistically and all of this. Now, where do we go from here? What's the next step? How can we push this further? I wouldn't say there's any like distinctly wrong things about it. I'm not looking at, oh my gosh, that perspective is completely off. You know, it's not that sort of thing. It's more about how can we finesse this. And here are some references that came to my mind. This was a fella, I guess that's his website down there. Love this dude's work. This sort of reminded me, and one of the things that this, looking at this, I feel like maybe yours doesn't have that much, is color variations within a thing. So like on these guys, they're basically one skin tone all the way over. But if you look at this fella, he's got wonderful range of skin tones. Dark around the eyes, red nose, you know, the gray around where he has the hair there, kind of a grayish, cool skin on the top. A lot of different colors in the arms. He's got, the paint there, kind of changing it up. Even on this horn, look at all the colors in there. And then it's things like on the metal. Look, working in the rust into the metal, giving beautiful, that's some of the best texturing that I've seen. That is so wonderfully done. It's just fantastic. It was underneath here. So that would be something I would love to see you implement more on yours. If you would come in here and, I think it works for goblins pretty well. Is having kind of the dark eyes underneath there. And of course we don't see his eye. But they naturally are that way, or maybe they have, it's kind of purplish around their eye. A little purplish tone around there. And then their nose, gets kind of reddish. Maybe it gets a little bit darker, a little bit reddish. Just trying to change it up a little bit. Give some variance there. And think about the places that there's a lot of blood vessels very close to the skin. That would be the nose. Also the ears, right? Those are big points where even on normal people, ears are generally warmer than, say the scalp or something. So getting those a bit warmer. And skin can really pop up bright when it is more translucent. And basically it's just a flap of skin. There's not much in there to actually block the light. So you can punch up some pretty good color there. And skin is translucent, so you can come in there with that nice brighter tone right along that shadow edge where the light is literally penetrating into the skin. And you're going to get that most vibrant tone right along that shadow edge where it's cutting through the skin there. It's like that sort of thing. Yeah, maybe we'll just stick to doing one dude instead of having to jump back and forth. Another place you're going to get some skin tone variation is arms. Arms and hands are often a bit warmer than the rest of the body because you cover the rest of the parts of your body. Like, the chest is going to be generally paler than your arms are. So just notching them down a little bit, getting those a bit warmer. And I don't know if these guys have stubble or not, any kind of facial hair that they shave. But let's say this dude does, right? So you could come in here with just a little cool tone, very lightly going through there. And I would suggest shaking it up in between like blues and a little bit greens. Greens are good ones too. Going through there. Mm-hmm. And that might be picking up a bit of a specular light. Getting some lag on my brush with everything running. So you can see the sort of the before and after that. Oh, wrong one. Adding that in there would be. In this case, you could also think, with these goggles, I'm not sure. Having done goggles, there's a couple of ways to do it. This one is very flat. It feels like it's just something that's painted over. So a couple of suggestions on this, and I'm just kind of picking out some random things, or semi-random, because I'm trying to find new things to talk about that necessarily I won't be talking about on other things. So on these goggles, you could consider that they are reflecting the foreground, which is going to be very similar tone to, that, just in front of them. So a gradation could be good, where just keeping it from being completely flat, like it's painted over. That could help a little bit. I did some goggles on Chandra and had to pay some attention to how that sort of works. And on those goggles, one of the things that you should be taking in mind is that there's a lot more dimensionality to these things than most people think. So so like it sticks up here, but yet there's often a lip around there. And then there's sort of another space underneath it, right? And this probably isn't going to be perfectly round because he's higher than we are. The horizon line's down here. So we're looking up at him. These should be, tilted a little bit. You're looking up at it. So make sure that all gets squeezed down a little bit. Something else you can do is just come in here and do paint it as if they're not there, right? Paint it as normal, as if there was no glass. You can just see straight to the face. Of course, it'll be mostly all just shadowed and stuff. You're just doing like normal eyes. So you got this fella in here, and they have eyebrows? They don't have eyebrows, do they? Okay. They kind of got like shapes kind of around there. I'm gonna have shadow from the goggles. Then you can come back with a new layer on top of that. Let's say that we just have a little, you can make like a little wide of the eye, maybe. A little bit. And then you can come back and say, well, it's reflecting some of that skyish color. So I'm going to just do, grab this, grab this. So that sort of feels like there's dimensionality to it. You can see which way you want to go with it. Something like that. Now all of this is good, and it feels like there's actually glass there. And you probably want to scuff up the glass a little bit. It's a smaller thing, but it looks like you're kind of getting to the point where you're wanting to do that. So, you can have some little spots. This isn't clean. And maybe it's just grimed up along the edges a little bit. So you got that. Yeah, and that's just a little bit different way to maybe handle that approach. If you wanted to punch it up, you could. Yep. Okay, what else? Some other things, if I were to suggest doing a little more work to different areas. This guy feels very generic, and his eyebrow looks kind of unnatural. So my suggestion is go look at like an old man that has kind of a larger nose, pronounced shapes on the face, that sort of thing, and try to get a bit of his characteristic. Go look at the goblins from Harry Potter, the goblins from the bank, Gringotts bank, and see how they did those features. They got so much character in those prosthetic masks. They were just fantastic. Go look at how they did that, because each one of them felt like a real person, and just seeing how the skin folds over that sort of facial structure, because they have very similar facial structure and features. There we go. Another thing is the metal. The metal feels like it's painted rather than metal. So that's fine, but if you're going to do it, say like, I feel like this is like green painted metal, and then you can come back in with, some sort of gray and be like, a piece is chipped off of it. So you've got, gray here and gray here. And then that is where you have, just want a little warm tone there. That's where you have the true metal showing through. And to just add a bit more realism to it, adding, the thickness of the kind of the paint chip going along there. And of course, the metal is going to highlight differently than the paint does. So along that edge, especially on the little rough spots, it's going to catch some light across there. And that would help sell that, right? Give you some good texture on there. I feel like this is kind of going for a brass thing, but you need to take a look at brass because it's almost coming across a bit more wood. And I'm being more critical because I just have the feeling that that's what you'd want me to do. You can tell me if I'm wrong, but there you go. This is running into a lot of the same values. All of that is. So my suggestion is let's keep everything inside of there brighter. It is full of light in there. So let's not have anything inside of that getting up to the darkness of the outside. And it gives you some beautiful color too. So kind of on that lines. And this is also where you can have some more smoke. You can have a bit more haze from that, right? Very low contrast on these. And let's really ramp up some of the contrast on some of this brass tone going on down here. Because it would be a lot more contrasty than what you got. So, this was a smaller thing, also something to keep in mind. Getting a bit more color off of that and letting that, fly away in the back there. All right, so those are my suggestions. Hopefully you find those helpful. Skin tone variations, a little variation in how you handle the metal, a couple of different textures going on there, chip it up, let the different layers of the paint show through. You could even have several layers to paint if you're wanting to do that. Make sure on the metal stuff, you're probably wanting to ramp up that contrast more and find whatever kind of, in this case, I'd be looking for like brass mask and just find something that has sort of a nose face feature that's metallic and then see how the light works on that and the reflections work on that. All right, thank you for joining, Clint. I appreciate it. And I look forward to seeing your next piece. I want to say the metal thing that they were writing on is a bit washed out and fire as well. Okay, I think we're talking about the other one. James, actually, let's maybe look at one of these questions. All right, I neglected to put in who asked what question, so apologize for that. But one question was, what's your opinion on painting or rendering too much in grayscale? I've seen videos of artists saying not to paint in grayscale, only enough to have a sense of lighting, and others say you should go full grayscale before thinking about any color. There isn't a set one on that. Everybody has their method. If you find a method that works really well for you and the way that you think and the sort of work that you do, then I'm not going to criticize your method if it works. I don't even paint in grayscale all the time. If you can paint without having to go through grayscale, I think that's probably better. It's just an extra step. So if you can do color and grayscale at the same time, fine, do it. But sometimes it is very complicated, or you're tired, or whatever it is, and you want to break it up into smaller steps. And so you want to do grayscale, in which case, absolutely, do it. But how much do you render in it? Generally, I find not rendering the scene fully because things change when you add color to them. And I usually regret doing a lot of grayscale work because I balance the scene really well to work in grayscale, and then I add in the color and I realize that what works just in value doesn't work exactly the same. It works similar, but not exactly the same when you add color. So if you do want to do more work in grayscale before adding color, consider doing a concept in grayscale, do a quick color concept over that, just so you know kind of where the colors are going, really, not just in your mind. And then if that makes sense, continue going with it. Side note on that, I'll open this up. I'm gonna do a little painting here. I'm planning to do a whole video about it, but let me just give you a little heads up. Okay, let's do this, and just do a little ball or something. So say I want this to be a red ball. Well, I've kind of got my ball shape going on. Oh yeah, okay. I was thinking I put that on its own layer. I did not. Just have to paint it out. Okay, so say I want this to be a red ball. That is actually going to be pretty close. And the big thing is this. This is sort of the secret to grayscale painting. I say secret because just most people don't understand it. Not that it's been trying to be hid from anybody. But if you don't understand it, then there is a big difference between using the color layer to add color or adding color through the other blending modes like overlay, because who controls the value? Where's the value coming from? Well, the value can come from the color layer if you're using overlay in some cases, or it can come from the other layer. What I mean is, let's do two. Oh no, stop. Let's do another one over there. Okay. Now, let's push him down. Yep. So this one is set to color. That's something normal people do. Yep. And we will just do normal round 100%. Red ball. And that would work, right? Or we could do a layer and have it set for like overlay and do it. Now this one is a bit different because it's affecting the value more. Each one affects the value a little bit differently, right? That one is really brightening it up because it's adding more color. This one is basically combining the two of them. So either, say this one's using the value of what's underneath it more, but it also changes depending on what thread you use. Like I can do the same thing. Overlay adds things together or multiplies light things together and multiplies dark things together, All right, but if it's the same value, it doesn't change it. It's kind of confusing, but that's the way it works. And that's also why a lot of people have a hard time doing grayscale to color, because they usually don't account for the value needed to get the right color. For instance, let's make a new layer. No, I can just come down here. For instance, if I went bright red, all right, and I come here, now look at this color. This color has to have this much value. It's value from this corner to this corner, light to dark, and then saturation from corner to corner this way. So it has to have, well, I'm going the wrong way. There's a simpler way to do this. Oh, that's the way red. I shouldn't have chose red. Red is like the exception to the rule. I didn't know that. Seems like green. Yeah, we don't have time to go. I would have to go over that in a whole video. Where is the value coming from? Is it coming from the color that you're adding in over top? Because depending on the color mode, it does. I think I'm just confusing the whole thing. But if not, then you have to have the right color, and a lot of colors can't be the right color unless you have the right value underneath it. If I try to paint this bright red, it's not going to happen. There you go. That's a better example. Well, I have bright red chose, right? I'm painting it bright red. No, because the value, you have to have the background value, the exact value of the color and the saturation of the color that you will ultimately want for it to come out that color. There we go. It took me 5 minutes to get there. But so if you know the value of all of the colors that you're wanting to paint, then you can do that and paint a whole image in grayscale before coloring it, and it'll be fine. If you don't, then you probably shouldn't, because you're going to end up reworking a lot of stuff. There we go. Yeah, I'll end up doing a whole video on it and have good examples and stuff. But moving on, James, what do you got? James Belwicks. He was saying, he had just sent me a message. He said, hey, ran low on time. It's not a finished image, but I wanted to go ahead and send it in. So here we go. Photoshop has a little bug. Well, if you try to remove the saturation, you see not the perceived value. You need to have a black layer of color. Yeah, there's some goofy things kind of like that. Okay. Lot of great energy. I love the amount of explosions. I love the speed of this thing, the crazy face on it, Gatling guns and cannonballs and explosions. So that's all pretty solid. You sent in a sketch as well, but since you didn't change that much from the sketch, I'm not going to go over it as well. There's a lot of detail in here. You've definitely taken the time to, think about what you want in the scene, build this whole thing up, getting good expressions on these guys. So at this stage, let's go for clarity, because it's sort of all over the place as far as values and colors. So that's, the black and white. So there's just explosions and stuff all over the place. Whereas, if we look at this one, it's more controlled. It's cleaner. So maybe we can limit the values in different areas to help clarify the scene. And I'm going to suggest that either the background needs to stay distinctly darker or lighter. In some cases, the background is darker around these guys and it's lighter on them. Or you can do a transition where maybe the front of it is lighter and the background is darker. But There's a lot of explosions back here. Let's get a lighten layer, set that to, say, 60%. And then pick like a nice orange. And I can come back here and I can paint over some of this stuff. Might even push it to 70 because we want lots of color. Yes, thank you. I'm not sure what that is. Something blowing up. I would treat it as a silhouette if you're not going to be able to tell me the whole thing of what it is. Taking a kind of a leaf out of the inspiration image, let's just simplify that whole area so that it is more, you know, a single color dominant. And then we can have almost the same thing up here, right? This can be more orange from this. We don't want to have as dark of a blacks in the background, or at least not the same color, right? We want a limited value in the background compared to the front foreground so that they stand out a bit better. Let's say that we have kind of a dull, kind of a denim blue is sort of a sky color back here. The brown just isn't adding anything to the scene, so at least blue gives us a little bit to play off of. And then, now here, like this is a good place. Obviously this is red, so yeah, let's paint it red. And you had a bit of a cool tone on the top. Yeah, that's fine. Let's pop some color on there. And we had, you know, light on the bottom of it. Yeah, cool, good. Let's throw that color on there. He had a yellow tag. Yeah, yellow tag, make it stand out. You know, that's the sort of thing. We can really punch it up that way, make it stand out from the background. Then the background can have, almost feeling like maybe some kind of dull purple tones back here, right? That way the darker tones of the top of this object can show up against it, but yet they're relatively dark compared to the bottom side of it. So those can come down here. And all of this sort of needs to be cleaned up. You need to figure out what the tones are around here and you know what color the ground is going to be. It would take a while to go in and clean it all, but I also need to think about what the lighting is in this scene. Now he doesn't have like complex lighting here. Every area sort of have its light source, right, with some individual little lights here and there. But overall, there's just a good sort of downward soft light on everything, and that's not determined here. You can either treat this thing where there is very little to almost no environmental light, or where in that case the light is all coming from the cannonballs and stuff, and that could work. That could be good. But it's going to make the machine more silhouette. Not necessarily a bad thing. All right, so this side goes into silhouette. That's where you can really play up some of the dangerous spiky shapes, right? Yeah, boy. But then when it gets to the front side, it's lit by all this fire. So therefore, orange sort of takes on the main light color, and even the green starts to be not, you know, true green. And so the front side of this thing is much more lit than the side part of it. I'm just trying to throw in a bunch of light real fast to sort of see the larger value changes. You can see that would sort of simplify it. Again, like on these explosions, let's keep them from having white and black and get so dark in the explosions. Take a look at how he does some of the, the fire up here. And he keeps it all in those higher ranges so it doesn't compete with the rest of it. So if you want this big bright glow, which is probably good, in fact, I'd make it a little bigger if you're going to have it in there, then you can do that sort of thing. And if it's maybe blowing up, you could have like a fragment, flying out of it. And maybe that has a little trail to it. Or you have some silhouette of different little, dirt and shrapnel or whatever is kind of getting thrown around there. And if you want to have more light here, just say that there's a light source from something. He has various little light sources of unseen lights back in things. They say, oh, I kind of want a cooler light source back in there. All right, well, maybe we grab a green and we say that somehow back here there is a green light. Don't even necessarily have to justify it, or maybe it's coming from the sky and we just get to have some cool light on top of some of these guys back here. And it brings a bit of color to it, right? Without really messing up the scene. So that is where I would go with it. Just a lot of cleanup. Let's simplify it as far as areas, color ranges, value ranges. Okay, one of the things is like these wheels are not, the back wheel is like tilted. That does get me a little bit. I know you're trying to go like for action and stuff, but wheels going in and out that way is not good. Like, if anything, you might want to bring them in rather than going out. I'm not sure how. Yeah. So there we go. James, appreciate it. Great, version of the vehicle. I love the big face, just the energy of it, all very good. It's not a simple thing to do, but I think you've done it well. And I'll just look for a good, clean execution on it. Jonathan, okay, let's move up, take a look. Oh yeah, continuing with the 3D model. Trying to remember what you've changed. Right, you added the other guys. I think that's good. Dude flying around, another dude flying around. You move this one up closer. I think that helps. Gives more of a three-dimensionality to the scene, a bit more depth to it. Changed up these shapes a little bit. Added some smaller shapes. Good, good. Got the wheel flying off. Yeah, I mean, I like the progress on it. I assume it's obviously not finished because, we've got placeholder characters and backgrounds and everything. But I like the energy from it. Something you could do is, I'm sure that you have the ability with your program. I can't tell you how because I don't know 3D programs. But switching the lens on your scene so that it is more fisheye. If we can move 2 feet, 3 feet closer to this thing, and then have a fisheye so that the perspective is more. Can I do that? Edit, transform, just warp. See if I can just kind of do it. Where the perspective is more heightened. All right, like, boom, he's up there, then the background feels kind of further away. And then that really makes it feel like it's flying at you because it's distortedly huge, like my hand coming to the camera. Whoa! And that's a good way to help make things feel more dynamic, is exaggerated foreshortening. And with 3D programs, you can literally choose what kind of lens you want to use. You're using probably something like let's snap that, and then you're using something like a 55 millimeter right now, which is very close to human. If you were to switch to something like a 15 or a 20, you want to get something more like this. That's like more distorted. It would fit the scene pretty well. There's a small thing on that. There's a limited amount because you don't have any, fire effects. I think, all that sort of stuff would help if you had like fires going off and these things were lit. We have explosions in the background. Obviously the characters themselves being added in, steam coming off of this thing, doing all those things that really breathe life into the scene. Showing things like fire and smoke and characters moving, all just bring to life your image. So there you go. Yeah, hopefully that helps. It's so close to the sketch version too. I know you've done a lot of kind of like detail-y work, but I'm still looking over the larger concept of the image. Yeah. It's still very, I don't know how to say it. Everything's very clean, like it was manufactured well, and not necessarily goblin-like, which is haphazard. Things are not parallel. Things are just makeshift. Not everything gets the same amount of treatment. Not everything is plumb and level. So you don't have to go that way, but I would call that out as being something you should consider doing if you haven't considered it. George. Okay, open this up. I don't know why it would have got echoey. Well, it is a little echoey in here, but nothing has changed since I started. Come on. Okay. Trying to remember the sketch on this one. I think the sketch was basically the same, but it was uncolored. All right. If I recall, then I like the design of the wagon. It's very straightforward. It looks like something that a group of ambitious goblins could throw together without too much trouble. And they got themselves, one big cannon and maybe an extra gun and some sticks of dynamite, and they're ready to go with it. So that's fun. Georgia says just for fun. I know it's the part. I think you were just having fun with this one, and I like it. Honestly, this is a pretty good idea. Putting like the tower on top of it. I think that works really well. And then the off-sized wheels are also a good call, because if you're thinking about these goblins, they're just kind of digging through the scrap heap, trying to find stuff to cobble together. And yeah, they probably wouldn't find the same, perfect set of 4 wheels to build this thing. They were like, oh, just grab a wheel from this thing and a different size wheel from that thing and, kind of stick them all together. So that's fun. I think the characters, kind of what they're doing is good. You got the scout, you got the driver, you got the dynamite dude, you got this guy just kind of like being goofy back here. If you wanted to keep working with it, I'm thinking you could probably ramp it up a bit with more weapons or paint some funny graffiti on the side of it, and you know, some orc face or claw design or whatever. Maybe some paint, you know, designs on the teeth, you know, that sort of thing. But as it is, I've kind of chalked this one up, like you said, as a just for fun piece. And I think you did good. It's actually a pretty good vehicular design for what we're going for. And I'm going to say that's probably the big strength to it. So thanks for joining, George. Marco. Come on, open. All right, Marco. One of the few guys that makes it go right to left. Okay, so you going that direction. All right. Yeah, good overall feeling of what it is to have a goblin vehicle. Christoph says, good morning. Good morning, Christoph. Thanks for joining. So this is another one, very similar to the first piece we looked at, right? In that it has a distinct grayness to it. The overall colors are kind of dull. But the shapes, the expression, the poses, the design of the vehicle, not dull. So props on that one. Let's see about just trying to punch this up a bit with the values. Okay, there we go. That's a telltale sign. Just opening the value, the levels palette, which is the values palette, really. And we can see that this equates. So this and this are basically on top of each other. That whatever is white on here shows how much stuff is in the value correspondingly below it. So there's a lot of stuff in the image that is between this value range right there, what would be below it, which would be the background. All that background, that's right there. This is the vehicle right here. And we can see that there is literally no whites, anything down to that. There's nothing in that value range, and there's nothing in this value range. So we could safely, boom, boom, move that up. And then we can decide if we want to move that middle one around any. I think it was pretty close. It's right around there somewhere. And we could also see if we wanted to push the saturation up a little bit. Yeah. So there we go. 10-second fix. And that's the sort of difference you can get on that one. Christoph says, just woke up. So the chance to see join the last few minutes. Actually, we're not even in the last few minutes. We've got, 4 more pieces to go? So we're just past halfway, actually. Okay, so improving this, I'm going to start with the background is going to be one of the big ones because it feels like this thing is sort of just floating out there by itself. So give me something with the background. It doesn't have to be a big deal. You have a lot of this smoke going on, and that's cool. So you could just have maybe some trees showing in the background, some rocks back there. Maybe you see some ramshackle buildings, or maybe you just see some explosions. Let's see what kind of thing they're driving over, right? Just give me some, give me some stones. Just give me some rocks. Just something, right? Just let's get a little more attention on the surroundings so these guys aren't just kind of floating in their own little world. And then as far as doing a bit more work on them and their machine, we could pop this metal a bit more. I think you have the idea of the metal. I would start by looking at our reference, right? How did he do some of this metal? See how he handled this? That's a really nice piece to look at how he did that. The value change is generally pretty big on a curve. Some of this metal that's like really black, down here, this is good reference. So go take a look at how he rendered those and start trying to add that into that. You could probably get some of this metal to be really dark, right? and it would contrast maybe well against some of the wood. Also, look how he did that. See if you can just step up the quality of the textures on this wood and metal. It would really help sell this piece a lot better. And figure out the lighting that you're going with. Because the lighting is very soft right now, but we could at least do a bit more with kind of the occlusion and cast shadows. So on this one, like we can see it definitely gets dark up underneath things, right? And this is nice, like even on that cast shadow, instead of going with black, why would you not go with black? Because then it would run into the black of this. So what do? You use color. Instead of going with value to show the shadow, he's gone with color. So that's a good call right there. Same color. Whoa! Did not mean to do that. Backlighting, stuff like this. So over here, I'm thinking let's try to tell a bit more of the form, right? So this stuff is all rounding. The basic shape of this, of course, is a cylinder. So we can let that round around. That way, these are going to be rounding around. And then, say if we're just going to grab some of the wood color he has from here. And on the top of this can be a bit lighter, right? Up here, goes down. I'm not sure what this is. Leather? I don't know. But trying to get a bit more of the form out of it so that there's some more three-dimensionality to it. Like this cannon. That cannon could be nice and dark. This guy would even work really well as a silhouette. He could be back in there as a silhouette, and maybe he's got a little light back there. So, he's sort of shown as a silhouette, but he's got a light, so we can see this stuff, but that would allow, okay, well, we've got some color and light, and we can see the swords and stuff in there, and that seems neat. So we got some of this stuff showing up better now. And then, what's that? Let's contrast that against a little shadow up here on the side of this thing. So this all can have a bit more shadow, right? Since we're getting some of the color from that. Then he's going to be back in shadow with that seat and everything. So it brings in a bit more color. Yeah. And then grabbing maybe some of the cool light. Like he's got some beautiful tones back in there too. So maybe cool lights from the sky or other area around him, giving some dimensionality to this stuff in the shadow side. If we're saying that the light's coming from the left, right? Correct. I want to say right. Talking about directions. And then if we're going to go with smoke, let's see if we can find some really good shapes for it. You can see some of the, like this is good shape. This has some good shapes to it. So there's different things like that we could do, is treating it a bit more less literal, right? We can just try to get something like, and then if they're going down in here, there could even be, light from the engine sort of still lighting them as they're coming out. Blum, blum. And then we want to bring a bit of dimensionality to it. So like this kind of blue tone, maybe we find a slightly darker version of that. And then, whoop, that's too dark. And I forgot to turn my phone off. I have a real habit of doing that. So there, we can build a lot more into it, add some more color into it, a little bit more it's not even so much dynamic lighting. It's not really that. It's about just using the lighting to sort of accent different points. Oh, yeah, I need to turn that off. And it also allows us to sort of say, well, this side of it is in cool light, right? And then the other side of it is in warm light, which allows us to use a different color set on each side, so like kind of a warm side, cool side. And that gives us good options there. Thank you, Marco. I like the style of your machine. I like your goblins, is what they're doing. I think you can do more work on the goblins. I mean, I didn't go over it. They're very basic right now, so I would love to see you go back there and do a little work like with the faces and the anatomy. I don't think that they're quite even up to the vehicle, the standard of the vehicle. I think the vehicle's actually got a better design and execution than they do. And I don't know about the red eyes. I would take a look at these guys again. Look at this guy. I mean, just pull in on him. Look at this. Pink nose. Green head, lime green on the top, very pale down here, pink in the ears, brown tones, spots like on the back of this guy. You can get a lot on these guys and get away with it, with their skin tone and everything. That would be something good to try. So that was, that sort of direction with it. And thank you for joining, Marco. Appreciate the entry. Over here, I don't even know how. No, I don't know how to read Russian. Sorry. Speak Russian. Jonathan, see me, but I'm not that good. Don't read Cyrillic. No, I don't read Cyrillic. Martin. Okay. Martin just joined over on Patreon in order to get in on the challenge. So I appreciate you joining me over there, Martin. And let's zoom up so you guys can see a nice good view starting here at the top. We've got a very vertical image. I will start by saying, if you're wanting to divert from the challenge outline, that's fine. All right, like I said, I don't have a problem with that. But if you were trying to follow the challenge outline, something to remember is it did have a set proportion. And if we're, treating this like a commission, the art director usually is not forgiving when it comes to you using a different size image, because the outlet of how that image is going to be used basically dictates that the artist doesn't. So I'm going to assume you knew that it was supposed to be horizontal at a certain proportion, but you just wanted to do a vertical image. In which case, cool. I kind of like the idea. It's a fun idea to have like this tower of the destruction. So you got a bunch of different guys. Every one of them is doing something different. This dude's rocking out. The guy's got a machine gun. You got cannonballs. You got whirly rockets. This guy's just completely metal driving this thing. Gatling guns. This is just hilarious. Strapping a bomb to the bird. And the bird has a little headband too. It's like, fly, my pretty. Good action going down here with the weird 3-wheel axle thing. I don't know how that works, but it seems like a goblin sort of idea. All the shells coming out. The graffiti, the no mercy smile. All right, wonderful, wonderful feeling to the whole thing. Now, it's a bit garish with the colors. Yeah. So let's see if we can be a little more sophisticated. I'm not saying necessarily mean less color, but a little more sophisticated. How do we use it? Because there's just so much everywhere. And again, kind of coming back to this one, like this one has a lot of color, but it's balanced well, right? It's balanced well, and nothing is really lost into any kind of shadows. A lot of yours is really lost in shadows, and the problem is a lot of the background is more vibrant than the subject. The purple sky back here is brighter and more vibrant than the characters themselves. And you kind of have that up here, but the limited value also helps. So let's start trying to do a couple of things. One is, I'm going to try doing a vibrance layer, adjustment layer. Set that down. Get down a bit on the vibrance and that, the saturation. And then I'm going to move over to the mask. Mask, right there. Then I can paint the colors back in on the main section. All right. Now, let's see about balancing the values and stuff a little bit. And maybe using a bit more color instead of dark. Let's make a new layer and have a curves, similar to levels. And I'm bringing up, I'll move it over here so you can see what I'm doing. I'm moving up the medium darks so that we can get some more detail back in all this stuff we put time into, and then keeping the medium lights where they are so that we pull a bit more focus back on there. Now, with this, I don't think that we want a background quite that vibrant, or we need to be throwing enough color on these guys that it offsets it. And let's try, it's like this. Okay, we can do, like if we brighten these, the screens can basically go just about white, and then have a, what's this layer? So I have a linear dodge layer here. So here, we can see him in there, and it has a lot more color We can have, you know, screen glows from all of that, and that works well. And do that sort of thing. Right, a lot more color to it. And we want to do the same thing in a couple of other places. Like we've got the lanterns, kind of lights here. And instead of just doing glows around them, like you kind of put a you know, foggy light thing there, that we want to add where the light is affecting things. And that's the best way to see light and make it feel like it's intense, is to let it interact with other things around it. So we can have that, and then we're saying that the sky kind of has this purple tone. So that's what we need in the shadows of stuff. Like this whole thing can be a bit purpley, right? And that's catching a little bit of that light. You know, and this light is right here, so that means that this is probably well lit. But yet it could go into, you know, a shadow as it goes around from that light source. And that shadow, of course, doesn't necessarily even have to be a value. It could be that color. And I'm thinking you probably want like some lights down here by the wheels somewhere to show off some of this stuff. So maybe there's, you know, lights back in here or under there would be good. Maybe he's got kind of connecting the idea that this guy's driving this thing is, you know, I can come in here and just do a little mask of this area. And throw a light in there. And then that can come across this wheel, right? And kind of indicate different little bearings or wires or whatever you kind of want in there. Right, and that's helping to bring some of the color back and attention back into this. And for the background, consider doing a lining, again, that has a bit more color to it and not running so much with the values. So you can have like a bright light that is silhouetting and putting an edge light on these things, but run it a little bit different. Like, think how, okay, you know, if we were to grab, let's say, grab that same color there, and then again, you don't necessarily have to show the light. You can just show what the light is hitting. And then you can have that super light going around this stuff. And this is also a good place where you can use some of your cool lights in the shadows in the place of just going for blacks. And metal, of course, is going to want to highlight up a bit. So, yeah, that sort of direction I think would help the piece overall, is if you try to get some of the values and the colors back into the scene. Like this, you know, cooling some of this down, lightening it up a little bit, because the smoke is like super, super black. And we want to keep it from being just so black. And you can use some cool tones, like in, you know, in the shadows of it and stuff. But let's make sure the tension and the color is still back over here. Just kind of a before and after there. Trying to give you just a sort of a proof of direction. I love the overall concept, man. It's a great idea, this weird sort of three-wheeled tower of doom. It's really good. Coming up here, you know, basically treating it the same way, maybe adding some more lights, like this whole thing gets into shadow more. You know, we can get that into shadow more. Then using the interior light somewhere. Maybe there's a light back in there somewhere that brings a bit of color out. You can see the light is coming through. So different areas that you had lit, you could actually treat as more silhouette and let some of the inner light come out. Yeah. Fun stuff to play in. Thanks for joining, Martin. Hopefully you got something out of that to keep you going. Another question. Okay, that's kind of a long question. Let's see if we want to even cover that. In the sketching phase, I have trouble playing together composition and perspective. It seems I can focus only on one at a time, and often I have to sacrifice one for the other. Is there a hierarchy between this two, or any tip I can apply? Someone said in that phase you need just a horizon line. My problem is that if I focus on composition, then the image is often flat, like I'm composing with paper. Paper cutting. Okay. And if I focus on having a perspective grid and making all the shapes correct, often the composition doesn't tell what I want to tell. I'm trying to figure out a way that allows me to make no sacrifice at all. There's always going to be a bit of back and forth on that. I'll tell you from experience, I come across that myself. It's a lot easier to come up with a design that works two-dimensionally, right? It's just a layout of shapes, right? But when you start working with perspective, there's generally a little bit that you have to play with, right? And it sounds like you have a tendency to put things sideways. And that is what makes images feel flat. That's one of the words that I'm trying to pull out of this. And usually images feel flat. And I know I have another student that does the same thing, that he thinks very two-dimensionally. He can do some great 2D designs, but he has a really hard time working three-dimensionally and creating depth to his image. And that's because he doesn't think about the depth that much. So for a while, try doing sketches where it's about the depth. How can you accentuate the depth of it? Make sure that there are things going this direction in the image, not just this direction. Do things in 3/4 views. You make that part of the strength of the image. You make the perspective part of the strength of the composition by using that sort of design. Find compositions that make use of like 1-point perspective, where you're funneling attention down into that subject. That could help. Another thing is there are a lot of perspective guides out there. I'm curious. Let me go ahead and open this one. I think I have a brush. No, not on this computer. No, I'm thinking of my other computer. There are brush sets that you can buy that have perspective grids of different ways, different heights, 1 level, 2 level, this sort of thing, warped, straight, all that. And working with those for a little bit, you can actually sketch into those, matching that perspective pretty quickly and make that part of your workflow. And you may consider doing that as well. Doing perspective / composition studies might help to see how some professionals do their images and trying to do it. That's all that comes to my mind just offhand. I might have to reflect on that a little bit and come up with something later. Okay, Mamit. I can't remember which way to say that. Come on, computer. And it always forgets what I'm trying to program I'm trying to open this with. There we go. Oh yeah, I remember this. It was uncolored. I remember kind of a rougher drawing to it that had a lot of detail. So this guy's on a little rocket craft pulling the main wagon of destruction. And just doing some background stuff. Lots of little details. Okay. A lot going in on this one. I had mentioned I thought it would be better if the ship wasn't so tilted, because it's practically setting upright rather than following his arc. But you're going with this way. And I'm gonna say I like the craziness of the vehicle. Some people have a hard time going crazy like that, but I think you've done it really well. You've got really interesting piratey sort of fella driving this thing, but you jump to extreme detail too quickly. And the overall action of the scene, color of the scene, none of that has been set. And yet you are doing like lighting and shadowing and depth on individual rivets. You are doing, rust stains and depth and glowing numbers on a little box on the side of the vehicle when you haven't determined the actual lighting of the scene. You haven't determined the value scheme of this scene. So I'm gonna kind of say, hey, keep that in mind. All right, going forwards, I have a feeling you're going to probably do that again. That's probably the way that you like to work. And generally, people like to skip or skim through stuff that they don't find as enjoyable to do the stuff they do want to do. And it looks like you're the sort of person that loves doing detail, which is the opposite of me. I don't really like doing detail. I like doing lighting and colors and, blocking the scene in. But it's important that you do, because if you just continue with this whole thing, you're going to get a similar effect that we've got with the other ones, which is this is all very gray. This is all kind of gray. This is all kind of flat. This is, I'm pretty sure, going to be about the same way. This is all just kind of a brownish, same value tone, all sort of desaturated. And there's not going to be this good pop of color, this interesting light. Where over here we've got good pops of, good lights and value distinctions and gradients along the image. And this one doesn't really have gradients. It's just kind of the same everywhere. So before you go do more detail on this, do a version of this. without spending a lot of time going into detail, just figuring out what you're going to do with the lighting. What are you going to do with the sky? Like you haven't even kind of blocked in what the sky is yet. So figure out what that is. Figure out what kind of colors you're going to use this other than just brown, gray, and go into that. I think this can still be a good image. Figure out, from this, what areas and things that you can learn from it and sort of adapt over to yours. What can you do to make this pop a bit more? What can you do to make this pop a bit more? How can you make that not just feel as flat? How can you give that more volume to it? How can you make this pop a bit more? Do you need to add some more light sources in here? Do you need to add, an explosion was down here? So now that the side of this has a good, light source on it, and this metal has something to actually make it pop a little bit, thereby bringing in a bunch more color, and you could have all of this back in here instead of just being this kind of dull brown. Now all of a sudden it has this wonderful shades of warm tones. All this metal can be picking up a little bit from that. That's good. And then you've kind of got a blue sky. You've got this blue flame here. Oh yeah, it's got a blue frame. Cool. Exactly. Let's use that. Let's highlight these babies up a little bit back here on these metal pieces. And you've got maybe a nice kind of bluish shadow up here in the shadow tone. Yeah, let's pop some of that color in there. And, is there a light on the inside? That's a possibility. Maybe he's got some sort of, I want to say more of like a yellowish light. Go in some of those areas that were all cracked and stuff, and he's got a light that sort of shines through on some of those. So there, we start adding a bit more pop into this scene, some more color into it. I don't know if I like that yellow. You might have enough without it. And the same thing with this one. Maybe this guy has a lot of good light coming on him, or we can use this flame, right, to do better, but this guy's almost silhouetted a bit more to make it feel like that is that's glowing more. That's more of this blue. All of this is being lit by that flame on the back. And then these can pretty much turn into silhouette. And you can see that. That's one of the things Scott does really well here. Uses a silhouette shape for a lot of these gears, right? He uses silhouette shape on some of the guys in order to make them show up. So some of the elements here, like the chain, doesn't need to be well lit. It could actually work really well as a silhouette if you keep the background around it more lit like that. So go make a pass of that direction, figuring out how you're going to resolve all of these issues before you do any more detailing. Then that will let you know how much detailing and where you actually need it. I've got two more questions, two more pieces, so let's go ahead and grab another question. What is your dream about Swatches group and YouTube channel? How can the members help you achieve it? I've set different goals in the past, but I would love if if Swatches channel could cover the time that it takes to do the Swatches channel. It doesn't right now. I would love to hit 100,000 is my first major goal. We're at like 48,000, I think. So it would be more than doubling the channel, and that would be a huge thing for me. The first small goal is actually reaching 50,000, because if I reach 50,000, then I can start making use of some features that YouTube has, as far as being able to offer bonuses and features to people that are subscribers to the channel. I think they're called subscribers. I forget what YouTube's term is. Or is that Twitch? Anyway, I mess up Twitch and the YouTube. But it's like when you get to 50,000, you can start offering products through your YouTube store right there on your page. You can start giving people like custom emotes that they can use in chat and stuff. So I would love to do that as kind of a way to just start giving back and expanding the channel a little bit. The best way, honestly, to help the channel is to join over on Patreon. That's the best way. And remember, if you go over there and join, say, at the $10, which is the main one that people are at, you're not just donating it. Every time that I have Patreon, rewards, anytime I'm coming out with a new video or ebook, like store video, not live stream, store video or a new ebook, you get that. You're buying that. Getting your stuff critiqued in the live stream is just a bonus. All right, that's just one of the things that you get for doing that. You can go up to the $20 level and you get access to the video archive of in-depth paint over videos that I've done for other patrons. You can go watch and learn there. I spend more time going over those, and I really break down how to improve these pieces, and there is a ton of good information in that video library. You also get the homework files. So like I've been going through the Understanding Mood book, and that's what I'm producing for over the last year or so, and doing the chapters on those. You can buy those later individually, but they're more, and you have to wait longer. So if you want kind of homework pages to put into practice some of the things that you're learning, those come included as well. So that's a huge thing. If I can increase the channel, I've done all the research on how to improve your channel and grow your, subscriber base, and I've done all that stuff. And the channel's still where it is. I find the videos that do the best, and I do more of those kinds of videos. I do live streams. I interact with you guys. I make a Facebook group. I've gone down the list and just done about everything you can do to grow your channel. But at this point, it's not a lack of ideas of growing the channel. It's just time-wise, I can't afford to. Even on Patreon, I'm put it this way. Patreon doesn't even cover Patreon, and much less cover Patreon and Swatches on YouTube. The only thing that really keeps any of this afloat, and just being clear with you guys, all right, I'm not complaining, I'm just letting you know this is where it's at, and because it is a business, right? And you guys are wanting to get in the same business, so it doesn't hurt for me to be clear about how some of this works from my side. Online sales of my materials on places like QBrush and Gumroad and ArtStation, that's literally what keeps all of the Swatches afloat. That's what makes all this happen. But if you want to join me out on Patreon, that'd be great. If you don't, just go out to, and purchase the stuff on the stores. That all goes back to the same place, does the same thing for keeping this all going. And I personally love just seeing you guys active on the Facebook group. It warms my heart to see how supportive some of you are, almost all of you are, to each other, and really quick to give feedback, quick to congratulate people if they do well and encourage them, give them ideas. And I'm kind of humbled by the fact that you've really embraced, kind of the way that I try to approach talking to you guys, and continuing to do that amongst yourselves, and that's awesome. And I really love seeing that, and I appreciate you embracing that sort of approach. Mamit says, I'm not sure, Clint, but I think I didn't get the last month's composition ebook. I think so. You released last month, right? That was released at like the beginning of December, I think. Either the end of... Was it? Yeah, I think it was released during the beginning of December or the end of November, one or the other. It's been a while. But if you joined after that was released, it doesn't matter if it came out in the same month. If you joined the day that it was being released, you still aren't going to get it because it has to be processed in the system. You have to be processed before you can receive the next reward. So, yeah. It's a little convoluted. I want to go into it. But if you've paid, then you've received it. If not, then you'll have to catch it on the next reward cycle. But it is all available. You can go to swatchesart.com and go pick up stuff out there. Actually, I don't know that I've put it out there yet. Go to cubebrush.com/Clint Cearley. It'll be out there. ArtStation got Marketplace out there too. So there you go. Kind of stretch goals. Just because you asked, what are my dreams? Those are more immediate. Let's just keep this whole thing floating and going. Keep doing all your stuff. Keep joining in, watching the videos. That's another big one. Just watch the videos and share the videos. Right? You don't have the money to spend? Can't join? Fine. If you want to help out, share the video. Honestly, that makes a huge difference. If everybody watched it, shared it, the views would go up like 10 times as much. And YouTube loves it when it sees spikes like that. So there you go. Stretch goals kind of for Swatches is putting out some bigger publications, like putting together the whole Understanding Mood book and getting a physical book and being able to do that. Other things is doing workshops. I want to do like a weekend crash course workshop where we'll start probably, 2 days or 3 days there. And we'll start a piece and end a piece over our weekend. We'll do live streams, closed live streams for about 10 people. And we'll start on a concept. We'll do a demo, to get the concept started. And then you guys will have 3 hours or so to draw. Next live stream starts. We start talking about the sketches that you send in. So it's going to be this whole 10-hour thing, 8-hour thing, something like that. It's like full day where you sketch, watch, and we go through the process of doing a whole image over a weekend. We get a lot of one-on-one time, video chat. Everybody's encouraged to join in on a webcam or a mic in order to chat with me about what's going on. That's one thing. I'm even considering doing things like, I would love to have like a Swatch Con, like a convention, and like anybody that's interested, like we will, all fly into some location. Like we could all come into Nashville and, just sketch together, go out and do some sketching out there. We can maybe have some demos, those all kinds of stuff like that. But anyway, that's quite a ways down the road. I appreciate you asking, though. Thank you. Mikai. I remember this one. I think you had it uncolored when we began. Yep, yeah, and it was the ship design. I talked about maybe embracing the ship direction, and I think you've done that. You changed up the design here a bit, got more of the the bow coming out there. I think we added that cannon too. I don't believe it had as big of a cannon or a cannon right there. Just going to the colors. This is another one. We could just bump up the values here. We've got a little value there, but throwing in some more contrast. So it's all very, very little through there. I might stop it about there so we don't lose too much color. So a lot more pop that direction. And I think this is for what you're going for. You're not going for this really realistic scene or anything. Fun ship sort of wagon design. The wheels, I would like to see more work done with those. Those are very basic. They're not quite up to the, oops, sorry, bumped the table. Quite up to the level of some of the rest of it. Take a look to see if I move my camera too much. Nope, okay. Double check. Yeah, the wheels, I would, just look at something like an old wagon wheel. We had some other references. We looked at the first or second week, and must have been the sketch week, I think it was, like armored wheels. So figure out something like that and put those in there. For the rest of it, considering adding maybe more of the rivets and stuff on some of that, or nails on these. I think you'd come up with some better shapes on like the fire effects. They seem very straightforward, and we can get things like puffs of smoke, fire trails behind it. We can get some really good curly effects out of the flames up here. We could get smoke coming off of the flames there. This little guy didn't get painted, so I would assume he needs to get painted as well. This looks like it probably wasn't finished. Maybe cleaning up some of those strokes or adding some rocks or something down there. If you wanted to go realistic, obviously it's like a heavy, in-depth redoing of this. But I don't think that's what you're going for with this particular piece. I think this is more of a for fun piece. I would like to see, maybe even that one going as well. Yeah. So I'm trying to, some of this stuff, once you're working with like pen work, it's not as easy to change it. It's like going back and redrawing it and then recoloring, not just repainting it. You could, I feel like this is sort of thing, maybe adding some flags hanging off of some stuff. Having some flags hanging off of this thing would fit the whole ship feeling to it. Yeah, that could be good. Maybe some graffiti painted on this, or it has, a name written on the side there. That'd be good. Yeah, that's about what's coming to my mind on this one. I guess it's not that in depth. Let's see something a bit more realistic next time for this Red Riding Hood. Let's, I want to see kind of what you can do with painting. Or take it, a slightly more realistic tone to it. I know I'm not critiquing this one for not being that way. We were specifying that, but just kind of myself, I'd like to see maybe going a bit more that direction. And these, like some of these shapes back here, just not as interesting as they could be, considering how interesting some of these shapes are. They're very basic. So look at some good, ink drawings of like smoke and good curly shapes and how you can form that out of there. And that would be a way that you get a lot more action and interesting shapes out of all that dust and stuff. Okay, yeah, I need to be wrapping it up. It's already 9, so we just passed 2 hours, and I have to go take care of a couple of things before I get ready for bed. I open. All right, this is Nick. Oh yeah, I remember this thing. Real behemoth of a machine here. Yeah, okay. Again, kind of looking back here. Remember the colors. Remember the fun out of it. Let's not get too gritty. This isn't a gritty sort of image. So I wanna step up some of this. So we can get more values, a bit more pop out of that, which means a bit more color out of this. And I like the metal plating over the wood, the action going on with some of these things. Again, I think you're getting too realistic. Like this is all very illustrative. The heavy lines around the things perfectly fits what this is. But then you go with like a really splattery, non-drawn design with this. So let's try to get more color out of it, and maybe even stepping away from having this same kind of sandy tone over everything. You know, throwing in some different color. Okay, let's try a fast variation and play with that for a second. I'm gonna mask out some of this. Okay, make a new layer. I'm gonna throw a mask on there, and then come back over here. Let's set this to maybe overlay, and use a gradient, just real fast. See, play around with different colors. Maybe we can set this to soft light. Nope. Or hard light. Nope, just brightens up. Okay, let's use overlay. See kind of what different colors and gradients would do to this scene. If you go with blue. So even that's more interesting because it expands the palette out a little bit. We have such a limited palette to begin with. Or we could do layer there, set that to normal, but set it to like 60%. And then yeah, like that's not bad too. It brings a lot more color back into it and actually gives you some cool tones. That's kind of nice too. So yeah, you can just experiment with this, kind of figure out which direction you want your palette to go. I'm going to say almost anything is going to be better than just the same sandy tone. I like that color. Yeah, let's just go with that color for a moment. And then what you can do is, if you have the cannonball, you know, firing, then the orange colors from this can actually have a really great pop against the background. And we get more out of that sort of thing. And turn that off. See if we can get some more out of the flame. Get more pop of the yellow in there. And then also throw some more red along that. We can let that actually have a bit of color around it. Like that expands it out. Down here, let's find some ways to sort of break this up too, because this is all within the same color, the same values. One side is this isn't necessarily even lit more than the other side. So push it that way and see if we can get some other colors, at least things like facing upwards. Maybe it's towards a greenish yellow light, you know, so you can have the tops of this stuff lit to one direction. If you don't want to do that, keep it in the same color range. You can go with like your light sandy tones, but at least get one side, probably like this front side, to be more well lit than the side. Again, those guys could almost be more silhouette and work pretty well. And again, if we get a darker tone there in the background to contrast against, then the firewall jumping out at the end of this thing feels like it's even brighter. And you can have kind of the red glow from this. Now we get, more of a sense of heat. Sorry, I was trying to concentrate there for a second. Get more of a sense of heat and get more color out of it. And that sort of brings more dynamic feeling to the whole image. And on these, we can be adding in a lot more of the blue and even lighter tones to the top of it in order to get more values out of it, bring out more form. Looks like you're stepping a bit more over to the purple side to it. So that's what I would do with it, bringing back more of the color. And on this sort of thing here, with all this dust, there wouldn't necessarily be dust that much in front of it, unless it's literally, like a bulldozer and is pushing stuff in front of it. Otherwise, the dust is going to be kicked up behind it. The treads aren't, they might throw a little dust in front of them, but I think it would make more sense if this was clear here with just some of the dust starting around that side tread. Otherwise, it's a little confusing as to why there's so much dust in front of a vehicle. Not sure how that would go that direction. Do you have any suggestions on drawing fireworks? Look at photos of fireworks. I've never painted fireworks. I want to think that I saw a tutorial online about how to paint fireworks just the other day. Take a look at that. Don't go for necessarily trying to reproduce a photo of a firework, because they can actually be very busy. What you want to do is focus on getting the gist of it. Go for good color and the right pattern, but probably not as many individual little things. Also, fireworks come in a bunch of different varieties, and the way that they explode. So, don't do one and just copy paste, change the color. Try to use a variety of the different ones, the way that, some of them leave a trail that sort of, hangs down. Some of them explode in all directions. Some of them, is more like just a kind of a Roman candle arc that it makes through the sky. Also, with fireworks, don't forget that when they explode, they light up all the stuff in the air around them, especially being the smoke trails that they leave. So I know I've taken some photos at evening time of fireworks that were really neat because of the way that the explosion of the light lit the trails in the air. So you could consider trying to work that into your idea as well. L asks, are you a concept artist? Yeah, I'm an illustrator first, and I do more illustration than I do concept art, but yeah, I do some concept art as well. Yep. And you say period. Okay, so I'm not going to respond to that because that's not a question. But Nick, I like the overall design of this vehicle, and if anything, I'm going to say let's push the color more. Let's push the palette out a bit. When you do that, you're going to be able to get a lot more feeling of the flames and the heat and the intensity of this stuff going on. I'm going to also suggest adding maybe some lights or something up here. This is just a big point of the image that has no good focal point. I said, yeah, it has no focal point. It has nothing to really draw you down there or give significance. I mean, if you just had some headlights on this sucker, and it was kind of, lighting the way in front of it, then that would be kind of interesting. I mean, that would give us something, and I think that would be an improvement. And just tossing some of those things on there would be helpful. Or maybe it's got a collection of them. Maybe it's got a row of lights, if you don't want to make it look like two eyeballs. Do some headlights on it. If you don't want to do headlights, how about doing it where it's kind of like what we saw in some of the other ones. You got lights. Maybe there's heat, kind of coming through these grills like they're heated. And you've got, steam coming out of these things. You can do that sort of thing. Even this, like if you went in here and added where it's lit on the inside, that could even be cool. Actually, I think that's a pretty good idea. That way you're working something in silhouette. And you make it feel like it's manned on the inside and not just on the top. So that sort of thing could be pretty cool. And that, in that case, you could actually let some of this be a little bit darker, right? Instead of the light that I was talking about, we can treat that as an overhang. Let that have a shadow across it. And now all of a sudden, some of this can be lit. And then some of this is shadowed. And I just had to think about that for a minute. And that warm light is kind of coming out, and it's what's catching some of this. Something like that direction. And let's go with more with the weapons. That was one of the first things I talked about. I still think that's going to be one of the big factors. Let's get some good shapes. Come in here, work with your line work a little bit. Figure out some shapes that do well. Kind of splashy shapes. And then come in and fill those out. I'm going to say it'd be more dynamic if we can kind of see trails of those things going off, right? There we go. Okay, well, that clears it out. Nick, thank you very much for joining. And oh yeah, I was going to say I was going to go ahead and cover the new challenge for those who joined a little bit later. So the new challenge, in brief, is doing a book cover for Red Riding Hood. Everybody should be pretty familiar with the classic story of Little Red Riding Hood. And the template will be available for download. That just has the text on these layers, and then you put your image behind them in between the background layer and the text layer. Don't put anything really important behind this. This needs to be sort of just minimal back there behind there. So most of your stuff is going to take place here. This is something we haven't done before, which is having to make a room for elements that's added on top of the image. And it's something that you will probably often have to do in illustration field. So learning how to handle that is a good practice. And I will have the brief here, which is basically what I just said. Red Riding Hood. Go for more of a illustrative, fairy tale, kind of graphical approach rather than a realistic single scene, something a bit more collage-y. I'll take a look at the work of James Jean that they did for the covers of Fable comics. Like, that's an excellent approach. This is also a good one if you want to do traditional media, pen and inks, watercolors, graphite, that sort of thing. Painting, if you want to do oils or acrylics. Something like this, if you want to be a bit more abstract with your imagery and working in the wolf and the trees and the cabin and her and the hood and, how are you going to work all those elements together? Also, if you want to do something very more stylized, even cartoony, such as something like this, that is also a good, this is a good place for it as well, for this particular competition. So that is what will be coming next week. Create your images and send them in. Of course, this is available for patrons at $10 or more. And you don't have to have been part of the last reward. Like, as soon as you become a $10 patron, you will be able to see the information and the link on the Patreon page where to upload it for next week. And that's where that information will be. So go to the Patreon page for Swatches, and that'll be the main. On the main page, I'll have a post there with a link to the Dropbox where you put your submission in. We're looking for sketches/concepts for next week. Don't have to have a final in. If you want to send in multiples, that's fine. If you want to send in one, that's fine. As always, all medias and all skill levels and styles are acceptable. All right? Just try to make sure that it is following the brief, right? So, thank you very much for joining me. I think that's all the questions. We got one question here, but I think I'll just save that for next time. But appreciate it, everybody, and hopefully you've all enjoyed the stream. I will, of course, be out on the Facebook group at swatches.group during the week. So if you have comments and questions, I will try to get to them there. Unfortunately, I don't usually have time to go respond to everybody's post, but you can always get feedback from the community out there. They're a pretty good lot, and they got some good observations, and they can be pretty encouraging. So don't be afraid to post some stuff out there. Ask where you can find resources, or just ask them for some feedback. So until you see you guys next time, keep drawing.